Hey guys, I'm Ricky Havoc and welcome to Loose Nuts Off-Road. Today, we're talking about the first 5 mods.
We get tore up in a different kind of way. We never really cared about what they say. You know we're proud of the monsters we've made. We take it to the max every single run we make. Jerking them axles, we just don't care. We break our shit up, jumping up in the air. Having lots of fun with our rebel rides. We're them good old boys with the fire in our eyes. Brothers and 4x4.
Because, you know, there's a lot of people that are, the first thing they want to do is get a light bar and throw it up. And that's awesome. If that's what you want to do, go for it. But these are my first 5 recommendations. 1, recovery. Recovery is huge. So, say you just go out and buy your first 4-wheel drive, right? I don't think you should do anything until you learn your vehicle, no matter what it is, whether it's a truck or an SUV or pre-runner or a Baja Bug, whatever. You shouldn't do anything until you understand how that car handles at a stock point. And then from there, if you're out doing trails, and if something happens, and something's at one point or another is going to happen, no matter what. It's just that's the lifestyle. You know what I mean? You will get stuck, and that's why you don't wheel alone. But starting off, number 1 is recovery, and the big one is recovery points. A lot of people think you can use the tie-down points that come on your vehicle from the factory, and the confusion with that is they're not rated recovery points. Those are just to tie down the vehicle when the vehicle is in transport to go from the factory to the dealership. That's what those points are for. So don't put a D-shackle on there and try and yank it out. I mean, I've been guilty of doing it, if there's no other way around it, but those points can and will break. And when they break and that D-shackle is in the air, if you're not using soft shackles, that can potentially be lethal. So just watch out for that. An easy way to get a good recovery point, especially if you have a trailer hitch, is the trailer hitch mounted D-ring. So it's a block that has a D-ring attached to the end of it. I mean, you can get those at most of your 4-wheel drive stores, or even Harbor Freight has them for relatively cheap. Just make sure they're rated for, 15,000 pounds or 20,000 pounds or whatever. But that's a big one. And then also going into recovery, you're going to want a strap or a snatch strap that kind of recoils whenever rope is under tension. So you'll pull it and then it'll bounce you. It'll kind of give you a bump. But recovery is number 1. Absolutely number 1. Number 2, extremely important, rock sliders. And they get overlooked all the time. And what I mean by that is a lot of people will say suspension, a lot of people will say tires. It's got to go, to me, in my opinion, it's got to go recovery, because if you're stuck, you need to be able to get pulled out. And number 2, you need to have rock sliders, because you'll get a lot of people I've wheeled with have gotten in situations without rock sliders to where they damage that rocker panel, and that rocker panel can be extremely expensive to repair. And for $400, you're saving yourself from having to repair your rocker panel. Some are more expensive, some are less expensive, but my recommendation would be to get rock sliders that are frame mounted, because that is your strongest point. Don't get rock sliders that are body mounted, because if you come down on something like a rock or something, that slider is now getting pushed up into your rocker panel, and now you've spent money on the rock slider that is now damaging your rocker panel. So that's a catch-22 there. So definitely rock sliders that are frame mounted. Extremely important. I've seen a couple of my friends ding up their trucks pretty good not having rock sliders. Number 3 is going to be tires. And you don't have to go bigger in tire size, especially if you're trying to save gas, or you're just getting into this and you don't know if you want 33s or 35s, and you hear a lot of people talk about 37s. That's all fine and dandy, but you don't need to go bigger. My opinion would be going more aggressive. Have your all-terrain, or I run mud terrains. With the mud terrains, you for me, I've seen you kind of get better traction in all areas versus an all-terrain. I had all-terrains for a long time. All-terrains were good. I slipped a little bit here and there. I haven't had too much slippage on my mud terrains. So that's another variable, but I recommend getting a good all-terrain or a good mud terrain. Any of the big brands, they're cool. I would stay away from off-brand stuff, just with my experience of running off-brand stuff when I first started. Better tires, whether it's a Cooper ATP or a BFG KO2. I'm running BFG KM3s, and I absolutely love them. I've thrown them at everything: mud, snow, dirt, whatever. I've hit it. So yeah, it's a variable, whatever you like. Number 4 is going to be airing down and airing back up. So I kind of group this together. To air down, you really don't need anything outside of a tire gauge, because you can air down with a tire gauge. It sucks going tire to tire with the air gauge, because it's going to take you 5-6 minutes a tire to drop down. I run 40 pounds of pressure on the street, so to drop down from 40 pounds of pressure, and I usually run 10 to 15 pounds when I'm off-roading, takes a while. Especially if all your friends are, they got the speed adjusters where you just kind of go around and clip them on all 4 tires and they drop down, which I have. But I've been there with a key or a stick or a tire gauge, just trying to drop the air pressure, and it's not fun. So anything to help drop that tire pressure, but make sure you have a tire gauge. Now, if you're going to drop tire pressure and you're not around anywhere that, say you're in the middle of nowhere, outside of like Ocotillo Wells, because I know like my Desert Rose has the free air out there, you need a way to air up. So I recommend a portable air. Let's talk about that a little bit. I had a cheap Costco air compressor for about a year and a half. It worked great. It took a while, but it worked great. And, speed wasn't really an issue for me until we did a night run and camped overnight at Diablo's Drop on top right there. And we got up in the morning. It was the middle of summer. So 8 o'clock in the morning, it's 90 degrees already. So by the time we got to the road, it was 102, 104, I can't remember exactly. And my negative cable on the air compressor, because it was one that attached to the top of the battery, it melted off. That sucked. So I had to rely on somebody else to use their air compressor when they were done airing up to be able to put air in my tires to get back. So I waited about a month or two, and my wife, for my birthday, actually got me the ARB air compressor. The one that mounts. I didn't get the one in the box. She got me the one that mounts. I have it mounted inside my engine bay. I went back out again, 104-degree weather, and that thing worked like a champ, and it pumped up 2 cars in like 10-15 minutes, and that's awesome. And we went from 10-15 pounds to 40, and it gets to 40, which is rad, because I couldn't get past like 32 pounds with that Costco one, but it got me back and forth. You don't need to go out and spend $400 on the ARB one right off the bat, or any of the other ones, at Gaia or anything, but I recommend getting a decent one. My grandfather and my parents, they both run the Pittsburgh, the one you pick up at Harbor Freight, like $60. It's not bad. It's pretty good air compressor for what it is. So number 5 is a complete variable to every build, whether you're building a Toyota or you're building a Jeep or Suzuki or a Subaru or whatever. It's a variable to what you're doing, and that can go from a budget build to a performance build. My suspension's a little bit more on the budget-friendly side, just because suspension is expensive and can get expensive really fast. Now you're ready to put a bigger tire on your vehicle, and everybody thinks suspension that's what gets you up off the ground. The suspension is more to help clear the bigger tires, because that bigger tire is also going to help lift the lowest point of your vehicle, which is generally your pumpkin or your diff, higher off the ground. So bigger tire with 2.5-inch suspension lift or a 3-inch suspension lift, you're golden. I do not recommend spacer lifts, no spacer pucks, none of that. I know that's super budget friendly. Most of the time, if you spend $150 more, you can get ride height adjustable shocks, whether it's Bilstein or Old Man Emu or Eibach or whatever. Stay away from those spacer pucks because nightmares can and will happen from spacer puck lifts. You can knock back that eyelet, and I've seen those bent complete 90s. Just do your research on the suspension before you. There's videos everywhere about suspension, from running a Bilstein 5100 lift with Eibach coils to running an Icon Stage 9 or King suspension. Videos everywhere, and it's all relative, to what you can afford, to what you want to do, to how you want your build to come out. It's all kind of up to you, but remember, these are all my opinion on the top 5. So yeah, suspension is number 5. It's a big thing, but it's not something needed right off the bat. So smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and thank you for hanging out.